fifth theatrical movie once again sees Hiroshi Kashiwabara as lead writer. Due to no one else being available for it, this movie also has the distinction of being directed by none other than Monkey Punch himself. Sort of. He certainly oversaw things, and said himself that the opening and ending were all him at least. However, a lot of it was handled by assistant directors, as he found the fast turnaround, 5 months in this case, and something that's been in place since the early movies, to be far too taxing. According to a video by Gainax co-founder Toshio Okada, he also clashed with the staff on Lupin as a character. The anime portrayal is noted to be rather toned down in comparison to his original manga. Monkey Punch apparently blamed Hayao Miyazaki's influence on Series 1 and Cagliostro as one of the main contributors to that perception, arguing that he created Lupin III, so what he says on Lupin's actions goes. Still, clashes aside, he does credit the rest of the staff, cast included, as being the reason the movie got finished at all. Oleander serves as the leading lady for this movie, portrayed by Minami Takayama. See you in a future crossover. Banjo Ginga, who voiced Jigen in Fuma Conspiracy, makes a return voicing General Headhunter, with Nachinozawa as his right-hand Crisis. Shigeru Chiba is also here, voicing the character Spanky. Yuji Ono seemingly takes a break this year, as the soundtrack this time is done by Takayuki Negishi. We do get a new variant on the classic Lupin theme for this movie as a linchpin, and the ending theme this time is The Sweet Trap of Damage. A prison warden selects a number of inmates. He tells them the only escape they normally have is death, but they've been selected for an annual game that grants their freedom if they can outrun the guards, getting a 5-minute head start. As the prisoners run, the staff muses that it's really just to give the guards some target practice. As the warden leaves, his discarded cigar fires a smoke screen. He serves as the driver for the inmates through the prison's forces, avoiding all manner of firepower. A stray blast blows away the warden's outfit, revealing it was Lupin disguised as him to spring the prisoners. The gang are investigating an artificial island known as Drift Isle, situated in the nation of Zufu. The treasure is supposedly located there that the current ruler, General Headhunter, wasn't able to access. Finding the corpse of a scientist named Volsky in an old lab, they head further in for more clues. The search comes to a stop in front of a strange door marked with the previous king's crest. Lupin orders Goemon to get it open, but the room suddenly springs to life. The gang try to fight back, but any attacks seem to only have a temporary effect at best. Despite not wanting to run, they don't really have much choice right now. Lupin decides to research Zufu's political situation. The previous king created the island as a vault for the treasury, and Headhunter took over after overthrowing and executing him and his son Panish about 2 years prior. Meanwhile, Headhunter himself is watching a duel between 2 women, one of which is Fujiko. Fujiko's opponent has brute strength but can't match the agility. Her victory ends up gaining Headhunter's attention. Zenigata arrives in Zufu, meeting with Headhunter's chief of police, Crisis. He's aware of Lupin being there thanks to a video calling card. 20th century wolf? Heading to the palace, they catch a glimpse of a figure resembling Panish. Lupin meets with the mechanic, the owner of the gyrocopter he used, discussing the whole Zufu business as well as Headhunter's daughter Emira possibly being key to accessing Drift Isle. Lupin also makes a request for a special boy and an ab balloon. Crisis reports his sighting of Panish to Headhunter, but gets reminded that he was the one to execute the prince 2 years ago. Lupin's balloon flies overhead, holding a calling card declaring his plan to take Emira. Zenigata gets put on guard, knowing Lupin will keep his promise. That night, Jigen ambushes a military outpost and swipes a boat. When they try to pursue him, the other boats fall to pieces, as does their phone. Goemon then emerges and takes out the remaining guard. Lupin emerges from the buoy he commissioned. He then flies through the palace, grabbing Emira as he goes. Zenigata isn't too worried, largely because the one Lupin kidnapped was a double. Not knowing the truth, the gang discuss their terms, but she gets annoyed by Jiggin's smoking. She uses her ring to broadcast the location to Headhunter. The police close in, but Jiggin soon senses them. The gang are disabled from within as the double unmasks, mocking Lupin for falling for the trap. Unfortunately, she also gets caught up in the attack on their hiding place. She's injured and drops a pendant with a photo of Panish inside that Lupin notices. He claims to have seen the man in the pendant's photo, which the woman declares impossible even with Jiggin backing Lupin's claim. As the forces gain ground, she gives her name, Oleander. They escape, but Crisis figures no one can survive a jump into the ocean when Oleander reports to him. Zenigata warns not to underestimate Lupin, but gets ordered to leave Zufu by morning regardless. The gang did indeed survive, the balloon doubling as a dinghy. Fujiko gets assigned as Emira's bodyguard, as the girl's somewhat defiant. As Headhunter leaves, Emira reveals that she's not his real daughter, and will tell the secret to Drift Isle if Fujiko helps free her. Meanwhile, Oleander searches up any info on Panish's reappearance but turns up no results. She gets attacked on her way back but manages to counter. Finishing them off, she races back to the bar she owns. She's soon visited by Panish, much to her disbelief. Panish tells her he's organising a rebellion, giving her a bracelet to keep in contact while he does so. The police move in on another bar where Zenigata's enjoying a meal. They make an attempt to arrest him, as he's still there despite being dismissed. Emphasis on attempt. Don't mess with Zenigata when he's eating or hunting Lupin. He does leave some money for coffee when they wake up at least. Panish then hijacks the national TV broadcast, claiming it was a body double that was executed and inspiring the people to join his rebellion. Headhunter watches and orders Crisis to bring Panish to him alive. Lupin arranges a meeting with one of the prisoners he sprung at the start of the movie, Spanky, who's revealed to be the former king's advisor. Asking for info on Drift Isle, he learns it's comprised of nanomachine technology. As Fujiko springs Emira, the latter says to give up on the island. She also apologises, as her only connection to the island was that Volsky was her father, and she knows nothing about disabling the security. Thanking Fujiko all the same, she says to try Headhunter's personal computer before escaping with the help of another of the inmates from the beginning. Fujiko's nice enough to cover for Emira at the very least. Oleander talks with Panish, giving info about weak points in Headhunter's defences. Crisis pays her a visit, telling her to keep tabs on the rebels and find their base. Not that he trusts her, as he has a man posing as a magician spying on her. Lupin, meanwhile, does some analysis on a sand sample from Drift Isle that stuck to him when he initially visited. It seems to pulsate as if it's alive, and further inspection reveals it to be one of the nanomachines. Spanky's getting wasted at Oleander's bar when Lupin pays him a visit. Lupin asks him how to disable the system and gets told it's not possible without Panish. Almost on cue, Panish appears at the door. He quickly flees, so Lupin chases after him. Lupin ends up losing track and encounters a bounty hunter. By sheer luck, a cat knocks a mouse into the bounty hunter's coat and gives him a chance to dodge. Another one's still in pursuit, so Lupin hitches a ride on a bike. Unfortunately for him, the woman riding it is also a bounty hunter. She abandons him on a building still under construction, but he gets caught by Zenigata. Zenigata takes Lupin back to the bar he was eating at earlier, bragging about his victory. The bartender comes in to tell him the ICPO have called to arrange transport, but the phone cord is too short to bring it to the room. He races up, leaving the bartender to watch over Lupin. Fujiko breaks into Headhunter's computer room. She hacks in and grabs a copy of the data. Bad news is the download's going too slowly, and Headhunter's on his way. He's only stopped when Panish launches his attack on the palace. It's only intended as a brief strike, and he returns to Oleander soon after. She keeps him hidden from his pursuers, but warns him he won't be able to stay long. He tells her Headhunter needs him alive, and that he just wants Zufu to be free, sharing a kiss with her before running. Unfortunately, Crisis enters almost immediately afterwards. Zenigata escorts Lupin to the ICPO pickup, still talking about his plans for memoirs and retirement now his goal's been achieved. He notes that Lupin's been quiet and then his face starts rippling. It was the bartender, gagged to prevent him talking. Crisis interrogates Oleander, but doesn't get any answers on Panish. Headhunter decides to try, being far less lenient than his police chief. A soldier interrupts him, informing that Panish's resistance is gaining ground. Headhunter decides to give him the freezer treatment upon him saying he's not sure if Panish is with them. With her life at stake, Oleander mentions Drift Isle. The gang meet up with Fujiko at Drift Isle. She shows them the data she got from Headhunter. The shape of one image catches Lupin's attention. They then start arguing about how to split the treasure. They also end up accidentally triggering the security again. Headhunter arrives, ordering Oleander to take them to Panish. She leads them further in, learning the security won't attack as long as Panish is on the island. Arriving at the door, Oleander reveals she just intended for the security to kill them, as she simply said Drift Isle and never mentioned Panish being there. The security comes to life and attacks everyone. It soon comes to a stop once Panish arrives. To keep Oleander safe, he decides to let Headhunter get to the treasure. A compartment opens, designed to accept Oleander's pendant as a key. Further inside is a central hub controlling the nanomachines, which Headhunter makes a move on, intending them to serve as his new army. Crisis decides Oleander has no more use and fires. Panish takes a shot, grazing him and revealing he was Lupin all along. The security springs back to life now that Panish is gone. Crisis is the first to be overwhelmed as Lupin focuses his attention on Headhunter. Fujiko is pinned down but manages to access the main system and install an override. Lupin lands a killing blow on Headhunter courtesy of one of his own knives thrown at a stray bullet. The nanomachine constructs fall apart as everyone escapes, pulling Headhunter's body under. The nanomachines themselves are actually made of gold, reverting back to their base form thanks to Fujiko's override. The gang loads up and Lupin has one last talk with Oleander. She tells him she knew Panish was dead, having confirmed it was Lupin when they kissed, as Panish didn't smoke. The one time he appeared while Lupin was talking with Spanky was actually Jigen. Jigen contacts Lupin to tell him they're leaving, as Zenigata's caught up to them. Thanks to the resistance beating Headhunter's forces, he's free to arrest Lupin. Despite cuffing Lupin, it doesn't last as it's another of his trademark fake arms. Zenigata has a brief talk with Oleander before taking his leave, and she tosses the pendant, able to finally let go. With no gold, the gang decide to go their separate ways in a rather literal manner, each picking a compass direction. Headhunter makes one last attack on Lupin as he fiddles with the now useless nanomachine device. He's quickly shot up thanks to some help from the gang. The slash from Goemon reveals he was also made of nanomachines. Not really sure whether that was always the case, or if him interfacing with the core system and being buried under them made a copy that made a last-ditch attack, as there's enough evidence for both. Either way, the gang at least have a share of the treasure now. They leave Zufu, once again affirming their respective compass directions. As taxing as Monkey Punch may have found directing this movie, it certainly paid off having him there, as we have another solid watch. I like a lot of the little scenes just showing off Zufu operating as a society as we move between sequences, as it gives a sense of life to the nation as a whole. Having it focused entirely on Zufu also helped out narratively too, as the jumping between characters and situations felt more focused this time around. Pacing is a bit slow but generally well done, as while Lupin isn't always on screen, and Goemon's once again just there, it never feels like the story isn't moving forward one way or another. And Oleander and Fujiko's parallel plots get enough screen time while also managing to not take over entirely. On the note of Fujiko, it does feel a bit like her plot with Emira was a bit extraneous in its resolution, but I suppose it works as a red herring for the audience at least. It does allow her to get the nanomachine override program too. Plus it does give another of the prisoners a bit of airtime following the opening, and I guess one could infer that the others ended up joining Panish's resistance. Could have maybe worked them in on the Drift Isle stuff a bit more or something, maybe marking why Lupin chose to spring those particular prisoners. On the note of Panish, it is fun going back and re-watching it knowing the twist. Some might argue it's a bit manipulative of Lupin to lead Oleander on as he did, which I can understand, but, well, unlike what the Series 1 song might claim, he's not a nice man, he's a thief. Certainly not the first time he's infiltrated and exploited a country on the brink of revolution just to steal something. Oleander also comes off as intelligent enough that I kinda think she probably knew he was a fake all along, maybe just got caught in the moment. The cigarette smoke on his breath just confirmed it for her, which her early dislike of Jigen's smoking served as good foreshadowing. Plus it led to deposing the tyrant that killed Panish in the first place, so she likely doesn't hold it against Lupin too much for that alone. She holds her own as a character, getting enough screen time to feel developed as well as displaying her own abilities rather well, such as fighting and managing to outwit Headhunter on Drift Isle. Another highlight is of course Zenigata. Not on screen a lot, but not feeling like he's just there to be there. The scene in the bar shows that despite his comedic nature, he's really not someone to mess with, while also highlighting his good nature as he tosses some money to get his would-be arresting officers some coffee. You almost root for him achieving his goal, if not for the phone cord not being long enough to take his eye off Lupin for those few seconds. Makes for a good balance of him being the comic relief and reminding he's the only one to keep up with Lupin. Art and animation once again being high quality goes without saying, likely helped by having the creator there to help handle it. The lighting and a lot of small details in the designs give it that extra kick to help it stand out. Takayuki Negishi brings a unique take on Lupin's soundtrack too. We still have our jazzy pieces and a theme tune to hold it together of course. We also get some techno sounding pieces, usually when dealing with the nanomachines. It also gets quite orchestral and bombastic in some sequences too, especially when Panish is on screen. At this point quite a standout soundtrack that feels unique to its movie as other movie exclusives did to theirs. While this may be the last theatrical movie we get for nearly 20 years, at least we get a good one to go out on. Next time, Lupin goes diamond hunting in Morocco as he searches for the secrets of Twilight Gemini. Until then,